Dragon reading event of the semester. Tonight's guest is, as many of you know, is Gustavo Arango. Yes. Okay, then let's start. Actually, a couple announcements first. To start with, our third and final Red Dragon Reader of the year is Stephen Graham Jones, who will be here on Thursday, April 7th at 7:30 p.m. in the Craven Lounge. And Stephen Graham Jones is a Blackfeet writer and the author of 5 story collections, 15 novels. Am I reading that right? 15 novels, including Growing Up Dead in Texas, which came out in 2012. He is an NEA Fellow and has won the Texas Institute of Letters Award for Fiction and the Independent Publishers Multicultural Award. And we have another reading, and this one will be at Hardwick College. Sven Burkert's Paying Attention and Finding Our Way in the Landscape of Signals will be reading on from his latest book, which is called Changing the Subject, Art and Attention in the Internet Age. That'll be 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 13th, in the Celebration Room at Scheinman Chapel Hall, Hardwick College. So a little bit of cross-pollination here between SUNY and Hardwick. Let me first thank our sponsors, the Office of the President, the Red Dragon Reading Series, and the Department of English. And we'll be having a book signing after the reading. And if you need lead credit, please see Ruth Carr after the reading. I would also like to thank very much on behalf of the Red Dragon Committee the indispensable, wonderful Ruth Carr and our fantastic chair of the Red Dragon series, George Hovis, who does more work than anybody should have to. And now let me introduce our feature act, Professor Gustavo Arango, from the Department of Foreign Languages and Literatures here at SUNY Oneonta. He is also the author of several novels, I don't know how he finds the time, including Santa Maria del Diablo, Saint Mary of the Devil, winner of the Latino Book Award in 2015 for the best historical novel in Spanish. El Origen del Mundo, The Origin of the World, winner of the literary prize Premio Bicentenario de Novela in 2010. And La Risa del Muerto, which I really had to pull out my high school Spanish to translate that, The Laughter of the Dead, I believe, okay? Which is the winner of the Marcio Veloz Maggiolo Prize in 2002 for the best novel in Spanish written in the United States. Professor Arango has also published 3 collections of short stories and several journalistic works, including Un Ramo de Nomio Vides, un poquito, a bunch of forget-me-nots, which chronicles the beginnings of the Colombian Nobel Prize winner Gabriel Garcia Marquez. His books Serendipity, A Photographic Journey Through Sri Lanka, and The Land of the Crazy Trees and Other Stories are available in English translation. Thank goodness for me. I can at least read them. He was the honored author at the 2013 Hispanic Latino Book Fair of New York, and now he is the honored author here at the Red Dragon Reading Series at SUNY Oneonta. Please welcome our own Gustavo Arango.
Well, good evening. Thank you for being here tonight. I want to thank many people. First, the organizers, the Office of the President, Damascene Bookseller, the Red Dragon Reading Series Committee, the Department of English, and particularly I want to thank George and Ruth for putting this together. And I want to thank also Susan and Dan, because I feel that they have supported me since I came here almost 12 years ago. I'm not a very public person. You can imagine I'm trembling right now, but I'm going to try to share with you a part of my life that is not well known here. I have like a Jekyll and Hyde lives. And I'm a teacher here. I teach Spanish, I teach literature, but other part of myself is a Spanish writer, creative writing, writer mostly. So I'm going to talk about that, and this is a very meaningful night for me because they are coming together. I'm going to show off. I'm going to test your patience with my vanity, my accent, so I hope you're not going to be mad at the end. And this is dedicated to my students, especially. I see many faces I have seen in the classroom. This is about you, about your dreams. I hope you're going to enjoy this. Well, I have a story to tell. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and let me put this on the screen. Okay, this is the Red Dragon series, spring 2016. I hope I say thank you to everyone. If I forgot you, I will email you later. Okay, so I'm going to start my story when I was in college in a very infamous city in Colombia called Medellin. Have you heard about Medellin? Yeah, probably because of that guy. So at the time, in the 1980s, we had in Colombia two role models. We either have the criminal life to follow or the writing life. He wasn't from Medellin, he was from the Caribbean, but in Colombia, when I went to college in the 1980s, those were the paths we were invited to follow. You know who they are? Well, Pablo Escobar, the most famous criminal, or one of the most famous criminals of all time, and this is Gabriel Garcia Marquez, one of the most famous writers of all time. I got a personal invitation to follow that path because my father was killed in the 1980s because of the war. The drug cartels started against society, against innocent people. My father was a casualty in that war, but I didn't follow that path. I prefer this one. In 1982, Garcia Marquez received the Nobel Prize of Literature, and for us was an occasion for pride. We wanted to follow that steps, the steps of Garcia Marquez. In 1982, I started my college. I studied journalism and social communication. And in the sophomore year, a group of students of the program of journalism published our first book. We were eager to publish. We wanted to be famous authors. So my father paid for the book, for the publication of the book. And four of us published our short stories. I'm very proud of the stories I published there. I was 19 years old, and I remember that I was experimenting with the point of view and the stream of consciousness. I was inventing literature at 19. And at 19, I was a published author. I felt like that was the top moment of my life, my first book being published. Notice these long names we have in Colombia. Anyone knows why? Why do we have so many names like Gabriel, Garcia, Marquez, Gustavo, Adolfo, Arango? Well, this is first name, second name, middle name, first last name, second last name. We shorted the second last name. But if we didn't put the second last name, our mothers will be very mad because we need to add the last name of our mothers in every Hispanic country. So we added the initials of the last names. I'm mentioning this because later on I'm going to read, one of the fragments I'm going to read is related to a character name, two characters named Gustavo Adolfo. It's the way how the writer becomes his own characters. And it's the name of a very famous poet in Spain. Do you know what poet in Spain has that name? Spanish toy. Gustavo Adolfo Becker. Oh, yeah, okay. Okay, so we wanted to be writers, and being journalist was a way of following the path of several writers that became first journalists and then writers of novels, like Ernest Hemingway, the same Garcia Marquez. So that was a way of becoming a writer of novels, and we all wanted to be writers. The title of the book is a very cryptic title. I tried to translate this like one wonders who knows why. That's more or less the translation of the title. And it's, we were asking ourselves, why do we want to publish a book? And we didn't have an answer for that. But it was very exciting to have a book published at 19. So we wanted to be writers. In Medellin, I also wrote my first complete book. It's a biography on Julio Cortázar, which is an Argentinian writer, a very famous writer. You probably have heard about his novels, Rayuela, Hopscotch, some movies. There is this Antonioni's movie, Blow Up. It's based on one of Julio Cortázar's stories. So my final work, my graduation work was this biography that, by the way, was the first biography written of Julio Cortázar. The book was re-edited 3 years ago, 25 years later, and it's still a book that is being used to teach journalism in some schools in Colombia. So that was my first complete book. I was 22 years old, and I remember when I wrote the last chapter of the book, I knew when I wrote that chapter that I was going to be writing the rest of my life. That was the moment I realized that joy, that passion I felt when writing this book was going to be with me the rest of my life. But Medellin was a very difficult city, a lot of violence. A big part of my generation either was killed or they were involved in the drug business. So I went to live in Cartagena, which is the most beautiful city in the world. Who has been in Cartagena? Oh, we have visitors of Cartagena. Do you agree with me that it's a very beautiful city?
Yeah, my brother got married there. It's gorgeous.
Yes, it's a beautiful city. It's like living in a novel, yeah. Like a Garcia Marquez novel. Three actually of Garcia Marquez novels take place in Cartagena, which is a city with beautiful nature, but also beautiful architecture, a lot of history. So I went to live there, and I started to work in the very same newspaper where Garcia Marquez worked when he was 20 years old. I wanted to start there. I decided when I was in Medellin, I want to go to Cartagena. I want to go to work in the El Universal, the newspaper where Garcia Marquez started. I want to start right there. And what I found there was a lot of opportunities and motivation to write. I won a national journalistic prize while working in El Universal. I was the editor of the literary review magazine of El Universal. And I had the chance of writing and publishing my first book of short stories, which is, my first two books. I am a fan of Vanity Press. So this I edited. My mother was still happy here. I edited that book, and then the government, they had some grants to publish new writers, so they published this book of short stories, which is, I would say, that my first serious book of short stories. So I'm going to start reading. I'm going to read 4 short texts, and the first one I'm going to read is the one that gives title to this collection. His last word was silent. It's a reference to a play everyone knows. What are the last words of our friend Hamlet? Silence, of course. But it's also a celebration of a writer I love very much, and I was very influenced by him at the time, which is Samuel Beckett. When Samuel Beckett died, I wrote a short story, which is the first one I'm going to read tonight. And At this point, you're going to have some effort to make, because I spent the first half of my life in Colombia reading the Hollywood movies, because I needed to watch the movie and then run and read the subtitles in Spanish. So this is my revenge. You're going to hear the story in Spanish, and you're going to read the story in English. Okay? It's just half an hour. I was 25 years reading your movies. Okay. So this is the story. Oh, wait. Aquí está. I think if you follow cognates and everything, you're going to be safe. Su última palabra fue silencio. And we have some Spanish-speaking people here, so they're going to feel very good here in Spanish in Unionta. Okay. Si no estoy muerta, this is a lady friend. I imagine how Samuel Beckett's life was the last day of his life, the last days of his life in a nursing home. So this is like a monologue of a lady friend he had at the nursing home. Si no estoy muerta, si no es que alguien me sueña o me imagina, me balanceo y hace frío. Adelante y atrás, al ritmo de aquello que por mucho tiempo he llamado corazón. Adelante y atrás, sin esfuerzo, ir y regresar. La única dificultad es comenzar, salir del cuarto, caminar, paso a paso, sincronizando pies y bastón, cruzar los pasillos, saludar a nebulosos compañeros del hogar, llegar al enorme ventanal que da al jardín, imaginar que es un cuadro, llegar a la puerta, saltar al césped, sentir con alegría el cambio de superficie y llegar al banco desde el que se ve todo el jardín y sentarme y empezar a balancearme adelante y atrás. La única dificultad es comenzar. Al poco tiempo el cuerpo es como un péndulo que oscila por su cuenta, tic y tac, adelante y atrás. Y puedes desentenderte, pensar que el movimiento impedirá que tu anciano cuerpo se petrifique, que las coyunturas de los huesos por esta vez no podrán tomar la decisión de fundirse para siempre. Tic, tac, adelante, atrás. Y entonces pensar que Sam no ha salido al jardín esta mañana, que no debe tardar. Tic, tac. Mientras llega, puedo imaginarlo como la primera vez, asustado, desconcertado, resignado, asomando desde la puerta su cabeza al jardín, observando con sus ojos de lechuza y luego emprendiendo el camino hasta el banco, apoyando con recelo sus piernas en la hierba, como si temiera quebrarla, largo, desgarbado, mi amigo, mi compañero de muchas mañanas de frío o de calor, la sólida presencia de cara muy arrugada, la quietud de roca que cada mañana se sentaba a mi lado en el banco y rara vez hablaba, pues como viejos amigos decidimos que desde la primera mirada que no era necesario hablar, que no llenaríamos el jardín de palabras innecesarias. Los días que amanecimos locuaces alcanzamos a cruzar 2 o 3 palabras. Fue así como supe de la muerte de su esposa en el verano pasado, de su decisión de trasladar su octogenario cuerpo a este hogar de ancianos, de su ya remota lejanía con el mundo. Creo que ese ha sido el día que más habló, si no es que soñé sus palabras mientras permanecía a mi lado con ese eterno gesto parecido a un comienzo de sonrisa. Tardó mucho en confesarme que había sido escritor y yo tardé aún más para creerle. Él, Sam, alguien que eludía las palabras, tenía por oficio la escritura, debía tratarse de un error. Pero a la siguiente mañana me regaló un libro. Era un libro extraño, no pasaba nada. Solo había una larga y monótona voz que cifraba su existencia en las palabras. Entonces comprendí por qué Sam no me hablaba. Lo que tenía para decirle al mundo estaba ahí en el papel y no hacía falta más nada. Después de eso pronunció pocas palabras. Yo esperaba su llegada, su rostro de pájaro asomándose al jardín, su cuidadosa peripecia hasta el banco y su lenta y uniforme manera de sentarse, de encontrar una posición para inmovilizarse, con sus enormes y huesudas manos sobre las rodillas, quieto, quizás triste, dando señales de vida con una tos apagada que lo traicionaba. Yo, mientras tanto, me balanceaba, adelante, atrás, tic-tac, y abría el libro y me imaginaba que era él quien hablaba, que su voz pronunciaba esas largas hileras de palabras, monótonas, tristes, lúgubres, purificadoras. Cuando le pregunté cuál era el nombre de su última obra, me respondió: silencio. Esa fue su última palabra. Nunca supe si esa era su respuesta o simplemente me pedía que callara. Tic-tac, parece que no vendrá. Parece que son ciertos los rumores sobre su muerte que escuché o imaginé. Debió ser fácil para él. No parecía tener un excesivo apego por la vida. Adelante, atrás. De todas maneras, lo voy a leer, aunque a este jardín le hará falta su presencia. Y a mí, a este balanceo ávido de certidumbre que soy yo, si no es que estoy muerta, si no es que alguien me sueña o me imagina. Esa es su última palabra, fue silencio. In Cartagena, I had a privilege. I was in Cartagena from 1989 until 1998. And in 1994, this guy, Garcia Marquez, wrote a novel that perhaps you have heard about, is Of Love and Other Demons. And in that novel, he mentioned his experience working in El Universal. And I was working in El Universal at the time, and the people from the newspaper asked me, what can we do? Garcia Marquez is mentioning us, what can we do? So I prepared a project, writing a chronicle, telling the story of how was the experience of Garcia Marquez in El Universal. He was there for 18 months, from 1948 until the end of 1949. So I went to the archives, I found some articles written by Garcia Marquez, even short pieces of news, and then I interviewed his friends of the time, and I got the opportunity of interviewing Garcia Marquez, and with that I wrote this book that is called Un Ramo de No Me Olvides, which is a bouquet or a bunch of forget-me-nots, which I have to mention that the story I just read was translated for this guy that is here, Sean Cook. He is an alumni from Oneonta from 2007. He's now translating a bouquet of forget-me-nots, and everything that is translated here, he started when he was a student here. One day he showed up to my office and he found one of my novels at the library, and he just presented me the first chapter of my novel translated into English. Never before I knew that he was doing that, and since then I'm always trying to prove his vocabulary. We were just talking upstairs. I was throwing words to see if I could fail him, but it's very difficult right now. He's teaching now at Binghamton Spanish literature, so and he has worked very passionately, with a lot of devotion in the translation of these works that are available in English. So he's now translating this book, and this book changed my life, because after that, Garcia Marquez was very positive in his comments. At some point, he told the press that I knew more about his life than himself, so that helped the book a lot. And basically, I'm here in the United States because of this book. I received a scholarship from Rutgers University to have my master's and PhD in literature because of this book. I came here to the United States in 1998, at the end of 1998. The book has been re-edited 2 years ago. This is a new edition, and it's a book that is being quoted everywhere when they are working on Garcia Marquez's life. Because I was very lucky. I found a lot of valuable information on his beginnings as a journalist and writer. So this is a breaking point, because after that, I had the opportunity of coming here and study and have new opportunities to write. And I told you I was going to show off, so that's the picture with Garcia Marquez. Okay, so these are the books I published after Un Ramo de No Me Olvides. Some of them were published by publishing houses like Retratos in Cartagena. Some others were published by myself in El Pozo. I discovered at some point that my output of writing wasn't possible to sustain if I were to wait 2 or 3 years that take every publishing house to approve and say, okay, your book is going to be published. So the books that I see that are not commercial, I just publish through my own publishing house, because I need to have the desk empty. If you don't empty your desk, you're going to be correcting your manuscript years and years. But if you throw your manuscript to the readers, the desk is empty and you need to keep writing. So I know I'm not going to be a bestseller, so let's throw that. 100 copies of that one, 150 of this. That works. We have enough people to sold out. Okay, entonces, Retratos is a compilation of some journalistic works I did in El Universal. Criatura Perdida was my first novel. I just wanted to see and to know what was to write a novel. So one day I thought, I'm going to write a bad novel, a very bad novel, just for the fun of it. I just want to know what is to write a novel. So I wrote Criatura Perdida. It's not that bad. I wrote it in Cartagena and I published it here in the year 2000 when I was in the United States. And this is a compilation of profiles and interviews with Latin American writers, Garcia Marquez, Julio Cortázar, Juan Carlos Onetti, Mario Vargas Llosa. This is not he's not well known, Héctor Rojas Erazo, but he's a great writer from Colombia. This is a compilation. I received a grant to publish this book. And then in 2002, when I was almost finishing my PhD, I won the prize, the prize here in the US for the best novel written in Spanish for La Risa del Muerto. This is the first edition. It was published in Dominican Republic, and then second edition was published in Colombia. That's about 2003. And then in 2005, I published this book, and from this book, I'm going to read the second fragment, the second excerpt. The title is The Land of the Crazy Trees, and this is the novel that Sean showed up one day with a chapter translated, and after that he got a grant from Grant's office. The whole novel is included in this book with some short stories, and that's when everything began. And now he is a respected translator, and he has published in magazines and everything. So it's a very beautiful career, and starting with just having the fun of translating a story. So I'm going to read, this is a story about, I don't know what is it about. It's about meaning in life, looking for meaning, traveling. One of my favorite writers when I was very young was Jules Verne. You probably haven't heard about Jules Verne. Yes, it's a little outdated, but he's the author of From the Earth to the Moon, From 5 Weeks in Balloon, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He was very famous because he predicted a lot of scientific inventions. And I was an avid reader of Jules Verne. So this is kind of a celebration of this kind of literature, but also looking for meaning in life. The the death of my father left me kind of void of meaning, and writing has been the remedy, the way of finding again a meaning in life. And in this story, the main character is traveling, looking for the land of the crazy trees, because someone told him that if he finally got there, he would find the meaning of life. So I'm going to read a story that I could have given the title of The Man on Whose Hands the Birds Will Build Nests. Okay, you're going to see what is this about. En Birmania encontré a un hombre en cuyas manos hacían nido los pájaros. Un jueves de noviembre, este hombre caminaba muy cerca de su casa cuando sintió deseos de rascarse la axila. Quizá exageró un poco y elevó todo el brazo. Quizá encontró placer en rascarse y rascarse. Lo cierto es que mantuvo su mano muy en alto el tiempo suficiente para que un arrendajo pensara que esa mano era el lugar preciso para armar una casa. El pájaro probó la consistencia de esa rama, notó que vibraba pero parecía firme y salió apresurado a buscar un hierbajo. El hombre no recuerda por qué mantuvo el brazo en alto. A veces piensa que no había terminado de rascarse, que rascarse era cada vez más delicioso y que ni siquiera notó las primeras visitas del arrendajo. Cuando quiere dar fe a esta versión de los hechos, concluye que al terminar de rascarse... Oh, I need to move. ¿Sí? Ok. Okay. Cuando está... Oh, sorry. Cuando quiere dar fe a esta versión de los hechos, concluye que al terminar de rascarse notó que el nido ya estaba avanzado y sintió que su deber era seguir así hasta que los críos nacieran y volaran. Cuando está de otro ánimo, cuando quiere otorgarle a su vida otro sentido, el hombre recuerda haber notado la presencia del arrendajo desde la primera vez. Ya ni siquiera tenía ganas de rascarse, pero mantuvo el brazo en alto porque supo, súbitamente, como si un relámpago lo hubiera iluminado, que su papel sobre la tierra consistía en acoger en sus manos los nidos de los pájaros. Cuando los nuevos pajaritos volaron y volaron, el hombre decidió que era hora de bajar el brazo, pero no pudo hacerlo. Todas sus coyunturas, desde el hombro hasta las falanges, parecían soldadas. Quizá hubiera podido restituirle el movimiento a su extremidad si antes no hubiera llegado un sinsonte que encontró en su mano, alzada las propiedades ideales y hasta la materia prima para construir su nido. El hombre también tiene dos recuerdos sobre la forma como su otro brazo terminó acogiendo nidos. En su primer recuerdo, la indignación lo llevó a su condición actual. Cuando el sinsonte empezó a recomponer el nido del arrendajo, el hombre alzó el otro brazo al cielo en señal de protesta, o al menos de pregunta, con tan mala suerte que en ese momento pasó un azulejo y decidió que esa mano levantada era apropiada para construir un nido. Según su otro recuerdo, cuando vio lo que hacía el sinsonte, el hombre volvió a tener una revelación sobre su tarea y alzó el brazo libre hacia el cielo en espera de otro pájaro. Ahora este hombre nunca baja los brazos. Cuando lo visité, me pidió que lo rascara un poco en la axila derecha, cosa que hice lo mejor que pude. Al final de nuestro encuentro me sonrió y alzó sus cejas muy tupidas en señal de despedida. Well, and this is a novel that, like, built with short stories like this one. These are apparently real stories I took from books. This was taken, well, not the exact visit to the guy, but the existence of the guy was taken from 1930-something edition of Believe It or Not, of Ripley's collection of strange stories. So I just made this story with the guy in whose hands the birds will build nests. Well, that's El País de los Árboles Locos, 2005. And after that, I kept publishing journalistic articles since 1993 until 2007, I published about 1,000 new journalistic articles, weekly articles. So I collected them in these two books. I was signing the articles with the pen name Wenceslao Triana. And this was the picture that appeared at the newspaper. Not my picture, just not my name. So people sometimes wrote letters to Wenceslao. They thought that Wenceslao was about 80 years old. He would talk about his prostate and things like that. Well, what a person of 90 years old could, 18, 90 years old would talk. And so that was a very fun exercise of writing with a fake identity. But then I got to write with my own name in another newspaper, and it was like if all these years I was writing with a fake name didn't exist. I got to learn to write again when I was signing the articles with my own name later on, 2007, 2011. This is a compilation of articles or lectures on creative writing. That's one of the fields I am passionate about. I think everyone has the right and the need of expressing themselves through writing. We don't have the obligation of being famous writers or classics, but everyone has a pen and a paper. And it's I know, I have experienced that through my life. We just need a pen and a paper to be free and express the deep world we have inside of us. And my stubbornness writing got some fruits in 2010. I won a prestigious prize in Mexico, 2010 Premio Bicentenario, and I presented the book in Guadalajara, the book fair of Guadalajara, which is the biggest book fair in the Hispanic world. I was so proud of my novel. These are the two editions. This is Mexican edition 2010. This is Colombian edition 2011. And I'm going to read the third of the text I want to read tonight is from this novel. From the third chapter, I would say the title of the chapter is I Confess That I Have Killed. Well, this is one of the killings of the character. La víctima siguiente fue un anciano. Después del episodio con la cabeza, procuraba estar poco tiempo en casa. Pronto descubrí que una manera de estar siempre haciendo cosas y en contacto con la gente era uniéndome a grupos de voluntarios. Bastaba llegar a las oficinas de un centro de ayuda para los que necesitan ayuda, allí encontraría tareas de sobra. Decidí probar suerte como lector para ciegos y ancianos. En la oficina me dieron una lista de direcciones, me recomendaron que hiciera arreglos para visitar a uno cada día y me pidieron que al final de la semana les pasara la cuenta por los gastos que había tenido. No voy a hablar de todos. Sé muy bien lo valioso que es su tiempo. Hablaré solamente de tres. Dos viejitos y una ciega. I'm going to skip here part of the story. The blind girl reappears at the end of the story. But I'm going to talk about the way how the main character killed someone named Gustavo Adolfo. Sounds familiar, no? Okay. Uno de los viejitos era un ogro, el otro era un santo. El primero era gordo y el otro era flaco. No creo que la contextura tenga que ver con el carácter. He visto flacos perversos y gordos dulces y mansos. Menciono ese rasgo porque es uno de los pocos detalles exteriores que los diferenciaban. Tenían la misma edad, 83 años. Ambos estaban postrados en sus camas. Ambos tenían el cabello de un blanco impecable y la piel clara. He calculado que tenían la misma altura. Al gordo lo veía los martes por la tarde y al flaco los miércoles por la mañana. Los dos se llamaban Gustavo Adolfo y ambos proclamaban que era el nombre de un poeta, ilustre para el uno, cornudo para el otro. A veces me daba por pensar que eran dos versiones distintas de una misma persona. Imaginaba el momento de la juventud en que se separaron, el autobús que uno tomó y el otro no, el encuentro que uno tuvo y el otro no. El hombre de los martes me recordaba a mi abuela, con su manera de quejarse. Era tiránico con sus empleados, tenía una criada y un chofer a los que mantenía jodidos con una campanita que ocupaba su mesita de noche. Le gustaba que le leyera sobre Napoleón. A veces, cuando se olvidaba de mi presencia, llevaba la mano al pecho, la deslizaba dentro de la camisa de su pijama y elevaba la frente con gesto marcial. El otro Gustavo Adolfo era alegre y cariñoso. Nunca tuve que leerle. Me decía, no seas pendejo, mejor me cuentas tu vida. Algo me dice que es más entretenida. Tenía una rara habilidad para hacer las preguntas necesarias y yo empecé a sentirme a gusto cada miércoles contándole mi historia. Uno se da cuenta de que ha tenido una vida cuando tiene que contarla. Okay. Gustavo Adolfo intercalaba risas cómplices o exclamaciones compasivas. A veces, cuando me veía en dificultades, se decidía a regalarme alguna historia de los tiempos en que ni mis padres habían nacido. I love this sentence, I'm sorry. The next one. La charla con Gustavo Adolfo me quitaba para el resto de la semana el sabor amargo que me había dejado la charla con Gustavo Adolfo. Por suerte, la amargura duró poco. El último martes que fui a leer a esa casa, el chofer se acercó a la cama del viejo y le preguntó si podía tener con él a su hijo de 8 años, porque ese día no había escuela. El niño tenía orejas grandes y cara de malo. El viejo apretó los labios con furor, abrió los ojos como si fueran a echarle gotas y gritó, ¿usted qué cree, canalla? ¿Que esto es un orfanato? Al niño se le borró la maldad y se le bajaron las orejas. El hombre se puso rojo como esa manzana que está ahí y a mí me fue dando ira mala. Si hay algo que no soporto, si hay algo que no tolero, si hay algo que me saca de casillas es que humillen a una persona frente a sus hijos. Nadie se dio cuenta de mi enojo. Cada uno estaba reconcentrado en su papel en la tragedia. Respiré hondo y profundo, esperé a que el chofer se marchara del cuarto con el niño, dejé que un silencio sirviera de punto y aparte y propuse leer un capítulo que hablaba de la muerte de Napoleón. Hice mi mejor esfuerzo en esa lectura. Además de la úlcera o cáncer de estómago, le agregué problemas de diabetes y de presión arterial, también principios de artritis. Mi voz fue lenta y mi dicción perfecta cuando dije que los trajines de su vida le habían dado a su cuerpo la fragilidad y el deterioro de un hombre de 80 años. No dejé de notar que ese dato había hecho mella en Gustavo Adolfo. Seguí mi lectura cada vez más prolífico y pausado, hablé de las punzadas de dolor, de las terribles taquicardias y los dolores musculares. Cuando leí el testamento que dictó a finales de abril, lo hice con voz dolorida, como si un ejército minúsculo me atacara por dentro. Al leer su voluntad de que arrojaran sus cenizas al Sena, me detuve y le pregunté a Gustavo Adolfo qué quería que hiciéramos con sus cenizas. Me miró con unos ojos de terror detenido y no me dijo nada. Entonces seguí inventando males y dolores, vómitos, mareos y gritos de agonía, hora por hora, día por día. Cuando por fin llegamos a las 5:49 de la tarde del 5 de mayo del año 1817 después de Cristo, Gustavo Adolfo, el malo, ya era ido. Bueno, remember the title of the chapter is I Confess That I Have Killed. Have you heard about murder by reading? Okay, bueno. Okay, keep going. After El Origen del Mundo, New Short Stories, A Few Blue Tigers is inspired by a quote from Chesterton, which is a writer I love. Many people have said to me, oh, you publish a lot, you write a lot. But when I think about Chesterton, for example, I find myself kind of lazy. If we count the books he published while he was alive, and then the posthumous works, we're talking about 100 books, more or less. So I'm very behind with that. And I think about Jules Verne, about 80 books. When we think about Joyce Carol Oates, if we ask our friends from the English department how many books has she published, probably 150 or more. So yeah, I'm kind of lazy. But these are two collections of short stories published after El Origen del Mundo. The other one is The Compass of Desire, which is inspired in a line from Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz. Then more books published by El Pozo, Ventus en la Isla, which is a collection of pictures and journalistic texts about Manhattan and a lot of anecdotes on the island of Manhattan. Trilogy, 3 rejected novels that I find not that bad, so I published them in El Pozo. Serendipity, which is a collection of pictures I took when I went to Sri Lanka, which is a place that I have been obsessed my entire life. Some people say that the early paradise was right there, and the history of Sri Lanka is very appealing. So I went there in 2012 during my sabbatical year, took thousands of pictures, then I selected just 300, and I included a lot of anecdotes on Sri Lanka. That picture was taken from the mountain that is called Adam's Peak, which is a mountain that people climb during the night to see the sun rise the next day. The walk is about 7 hours, so the right moment to leave from the base of the mountain to get there and see the sun rise is about 10, 11 in the night, and people is chanting and praying and everything. And there is a footprint on top of the mountain, and they say that is the footprint of Adam, when they were thrown out of the paradise. Some people say that is the footprint of Buddha, but it's a very interesting place to visit. So that's the moment when the day was down. And Morir in Sri Lanka, which is my family, my friends have heard that sentence all the time. I always tell them I'm going to die in Sri Lanka. So I just wrote a novel related to my trip to Sri Lanka. This is the translation of some of the texts I have written. Sean is the translator. Here is The Land of the Crazy Trees, and mostly what I have read tonight. Su última palabra fue silencio, his last word was silence. Some excerpts from El Origen del Mundo, I don't recall what else. And I confess that I have killed, yes. Okay, and over the last couple of years, this is Vanity Press, but these are real publishing houses. This is a novel I published in 2014. It's a historical novel, Santa María del Diablo, and it is a novel that recreates the history of the first city that the Spaniards established in continental America. When we say America in the Hispanic world, we don't refer only to the United States, we refer to the whole continent. So Santa María del Darien was established in 1510 near Panama. It was, at the time, it was bigger than Madrid, but the city disappeared because of the illnesses. There was a Modorra plague. People just fell asleep and they will die. They weren't able to wake up again. About 700 people died just because they felt sleepy and they couldn't wake up and eat. So they will die of hunger while sleeping. And the divisions, the cruelty, everything, so the city just lasted 15 years. So this is the story of the 15 years of Santa María del Darien. It won a prestigious prize. I conveniently edited the picture to see who were the winners in other categories. I told you I was going to show up. So the novel won the best historical novel in Spanish. That was published in 2014. And last Friday, I just received this one, Resplandor. It was published 2 weeks ago in Colombia. And it's a story that I have been working on for about 30 years. It's the story of Fa Xian, which is a Chinese monk that lived in the 4th and 5th centuries of our era. He went from China, he walked, and he went to India, he went to Sri Lanka looking for sacred texts of the Buddhism. And he was one of the main responsibles of the development of Buddhism in China. The journey took him 14 years to go to India, Sri Lanka, and then he returned by sea. So I recreated the story of Fa Xian, the travel, but I also mixed that with my own visit to Sri Lanka because I went to the places where Fa Xian was working in the transcription of the sacred texts. So it's a story that tells the story of Fa Xian. It tells my story, but also it tells the story of Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. It's like 2,500 years in 300 pages. I'm kind of ambitious. But okay, this is the last novel, the most recent novel. But I want to finish reading one of my shortest stories. It's just 200 words, but paradoxically, it's one of my most successful stories. It was published first in an anthology in Colombia, then it was published in Argentina, then it was published in Germany, and in that particular edition, I feel so proud about that because I'm sharing space with Borges and Garcia Marquez, so my own masters, I am next to them. So it's a story I love very much. Last year it was included in a textbook, a Spanish textbook here in the United States. So we're going to finish our Red Dragons reading today with this short story. The title is Escapar, and Sean just translated the story this weekend. You couldn't go to party, no St. Patrick's. Okay, well. Escapar. Han venido a decirme que debía marcharme, que no había tiempo que perder, que no había tiempo ni espacio para llevarme nada, que una sombra que puede ser la misma muerte me acechaba. Han dicho que tendremos que ir muy lejos. Me han apurado para que me vista, para que no pierda segundos preciosos amarrándome el calzado. Al salir, he podido echarle un vistazo a mi lugar, casi sin ver nada, sin fijar la mirada en lo que dejaba. Solo luego, ya cuando el asedio parece distante, he tenido tiempo para hacer nítida la última visión. He visto las fotografías en el nochero. Esperemos que la memoria no borre la imagen de aquellos a los que quiero. He visto mi reloj, su segundero roto, el cenicero que me regaló la tía Carola, los cuadros en la pared, sus rústicos marcos, los cuadernos, mis lápices, la jarra del agua, el calorcito que hacía en ese sitio mi hogar, y me he sentido triste, vacío en ese camino que desconozco y que ahora recorro, despojado por aquellos que pretendían salvarme del despojo, y me he preguntado si en la prisa por partir no me habré dejado a mí también. I wrote this story when I was 20 years old, before I left Medellin. And I think at that point I was preparing myself to leave, to have a long journey. And I think one of the best places I have been and stayed during the journey of life has been Oneonta. I have enjoyed teaching here, and I have had the perfect conditions to write, to fulfill my dreaming of becoming a writer. Thank you very much.
Like to take some questions?
Sure.
Yeah, we have so many students.
So,
Any questions, anyone?
Susan.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. That was amazing to share so much about your life and your career. I'm wondering if you could. I was really struck by the last book and about the journey and so much and how your life has been shaped by in the first instance having to flee a very violent situation and here for professional opportunities. How has living in the Northeast United States sculpted your writing? Can you say a bit more about, as you're looking at this trajectory, how's the experience of living here in this place? It's not how is it? Can you say a bit about that experience? And would you say that you're would you claim yourself as a bicultural person, or would you feel that sometimes that there's a sense of exile? How do you kind of think about that space?
Yes, I think my displacement from Medellin had two steps. The first one was when I went to Cartagena, and if the people who know Colombia, the regions are very different. So when I was born, it was a very rigid culture. We use, in grammar terms, we use the usted, the formal usted or the vos. And then when I went to the Caribbean, they used tú, which is a more warm, welcoming way of talking to people. So for me, going from Medellin to Cartagena was the first moment I became very aware of language, and I felt that my language was flowing better when I assimilated the language of Cartagena. Then I came to the United States, and I had, I think, two great privileges. One is definitely we need to be bilingual. Bilingualism contributes a lot to writing, because in regions you see language from different perspectives. You have different personalities in English and in Spanish. I am a different person in English and Spanish. And the reflection on words and how you see this word in this language and the other words in the other language, the pleasure you feel, for example, when you are reading a book and you don't know what language is the book written on. Just you realize, oh, this book is in English, but that one before it was in Spanish. You're not conscious of what language are you reading. So that gives you a lot of texture, language, but also being here in the United States, you are in connection with different varieties of Spanish. So the Spanish from Mexico, the Spanish from Argentina, the Spanish from Venezuela, from the Caribbean, and then you are assimilating all that. So it's like a privilege, and you feel that. I know that I'm a less bad writer since I came here because I have all these influences. Of course, there is a price for that. Once you leave the place you were born, you are from no place. There is no coming back. If I go back to Colombia, I will feel foreigner there. And I will always feel foreigner here. No matter how many years I spend here, I won't feel that this is my place. But if I go back, it's the same feeling. So this is the price you pay for that. But in terms of writing, all those experiences contribute to the way you express in your books. I definitely, when I see what I wrote before I left Colombia and what I write today, I am more playful. I have more resources, language-wise.